Hello everybody! GGC Anime here today. We're to review Mashle Magic and Muscles Season 2, or Mashle Magic and Muscles, the Divine Visionary Canon Exam Arc. So without further ado, let's just hop right into this. So, what is the story behind Mashle Season 2? Basically, now that one of Mashle's biggest secrets is revealed to the world, he now has to compete in the Divine Visionary Canon exam in order to become a Divine Visionary and earn his place in the world. And with all the stuff against the wall, he doesn't know what else to do except compete and try to win with his fists. So, yeah, that's how things start, and yeah, I know that's not really a great type of story summary, but we're just gonna roll with it. So, in terms of spoiler-free thoughts, I freaking love this season because it's just like, Season 2 of Mashle has definitely been one of my favorite animes of recent times from watching, because overall, it just does so many things right. The comedy is hilarious, the characters are great, there's lots of good development, and you get to see Mash just be Mash. There's just so many fun elements here, and without going into spoilers, it just astounds me how freaking good some of the writing is for this show. Like, there are times where, even though we know where things are gonna go down, we know how things will turn out in the end, they still are so much fun, and sometimes extremely freaking funny, as well as satisfying. Like, I remember there's even one time near the end of the season where Mash is doing something, and I find myself actually rooting for him, being like, yeah, Mash, you could do it! Like, it wasn't just like in my mind, like, oh man, he could do this, he could do this. It's more like, I was literally like verbally saying, you got this, Mash! Come on! Come on! Like, it just does such a good job at really getting me into all of Mash's journey. And the fact that there's so many twists and turns in this season as well, because I can't really describe them without spoilers, so we're just gonna hold off on those for a little bit. But there are some crazy twists this season that I did not expect, as well as some people who I thought were just gonna be straight up kind of like generic enemies, only for them to actually have some very interesting character behind them. And there's so many really cool aspects to how everything's handled, including how Mash, like last season, does a great job at handling his surroundings, even if he doesn't have magic like everyone else. It is something that I really appreciate with his character, as they could have easily just been like, all right, he's just One Punch Man, he just destroys everything. But no, he has a very unique personality that I really like about his character, and I do find the fact that even though you know how he's going to react to situations, you still want to see how he does those things. Sometimes they can be so flippin' funny. Again, I can't describe them without spoilers, because, you know, there's going to be a lot of spoiler talk here later, but it's just, there's so many fun elements to this that do such an amazing job at keeping me entertained. Not only are the fights really good in terms of like how they're built up, how the enemy at the time is going to be beaten down, like they do such a good job at making you want to see those guys get taken down, and they also have some hilarious comedy in there that really adds to it and really makes me laugh. And it's just such an amazing job at keeping me fully invested in the story and the world and the characters, and it's just fun. It is legitimately one of the most fun anime I've watched. It is just so entertaining, and there's not really much else I could say about that front, just because it's just fun. That describes it perfectly. It's fun. It is so much fun. And even if it may not be the first time I have seen an overpowered to an extent character beat up other enemies, I still think that Mash's journey and his whole goal to hopefully eventually find the piece he wants is really fun to watch, especially with how he's doing all of this with just his fists, no magic, just trying his best to keep moving forward. It is such a fun thing. And he's not even the only one who really gets a lot of development this season. There's other characters as well that honestly I just kind of put into the background of my mind and didn't really think about, that really shine. There were also some characters that I wish shined a bit more but didn't really this season, but even so, I still think that most of the characters did an amazing job, and I am definitely interested in seeing what kind of stuff goes down next, since this has been so much fun to watch. But yeah, that's all I can really say without spoiling anything, because there's a lot of things I want to talk about in the spoiler section, so we're just gonna hop into that now. Here's the timestamps when the spoilers, and if you haven't seen the show, I recommend sticking around, hearing my thoughts. But you should get to the end to get any spoilers. But again, if you have seen it, I recommend sticking around, hearing my thoughts. So yeah, we're gonna catch up from 5. We're going to enter the spoiler section. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so kind of going in order here from what happens at beginning to end. The first thing I want to talk about is the interesting dynamic between Mash and one of his seniors at the school, Max, who at first is only really helping him out because he was asked to do so by Rain, who saw a lot of potential in Mash, but then he actually sees Mash in action and realizes, oh yeah, he's the guy I want to see succeed. And that was a really interesting development, since I thought that it was really interesting seeing the two of them work together and how they managed to achieve pulling off some of the earlier parts of the exam together before, you know, Max eventually just got, you know, yeeted off by one of the main villains at the start of the season, Carpaccio, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But I really do think that the dynamic between Mash and Max was a really fun one, and while it was disappointing to see Max get out, it was still very interesting to have him on screen. But yeah, moving past that, I wanted to talk about Carpaccio, and I'll be honest, he is the perfect amount of both hateable, but at the same time, you almost kind of understand why he is as crazy as he is. Basically, he has a special type of origin wand or something. I don't remember the exact details of it, but basically he has this special wand that basically makes him unable to feel pain, since any pain he gains gets transferred off to the person who caused him pain. And it wasn't until Mash finally came into the picture that he finally started to learn pain, because Mash was just like, all right, you messed with my friends. Well, guess I'll mess with you. And the funny thing is, before Mash came to the picture, we got a really good, interesting moment with Finn, where there's this team event where a bunch of people have to team up and keep hold of these special crystals that they've been given. And Mash, as well as Dot, who are his teammates for this, both end up breaking there, so he is the only one left. And so when he's confronted by Capaccio, he then has to choose to give it up or hold on to it in order to make sure that he, Mash, and Dot stay in the whole competition, and not just the competition, the whole exam. And it's super interesting to see how far that he is willing to go, the amount of pain he's willing to endure in order to make sure that his friends stay in this. And it was truly an interesting experience seeing him stand up for what he truly wants to do and how he wants to be able to support his friends. And even though Finn is by far the most basic of the main crew, he really stood out during that whole storyline, and I was really proud of him for that. But moving past that, next we want to talk about Capaccio and his fight with Mash, where after he tells Mash how any pain he receives gets given back to Mash, Mash is just like, all right, if you're gonna keep getting hits but only let me feel the pain, then I'm just gonna keep hitting harder until eventually you break down. And that's what he does, but he does it in the most unexpected way, where he ends up getting this wand near the start of the season, and he takes that wand and morphs it into the shape of a tennis racket, and then just starts beating up this thing behind Carpaccio. It's like acting as his shield to send the pain back. And then after that, Mash just keeps just hitting it back with the tennis ball, the tennis ball stuff like that. He just keeps hitting him back over and over again, and it is just so funny. It reminds me why Mash is such a great character, because he always creates such unique ways to use his strength to his advantage, and it is so funny and it's so good. And eventually he does beat Carpaccio, and it is truly just such an awesome, incredible moment that really showed off how much Mash was willing to push himself forward in order to protect his friends after everything that happened with Finn getting incredibly injured during the whole incident. But anyway, after that, we move on to the next part of the exam, where everyone's kind of doing like a 1v1 situation, and Mash is going up against this guy called Margaret, who is basically like this prodigy music caster person, and he's looking to be entertained and figures that Mash Burn Dead would be the next one to entertain him because he just wants interesting people to fight. And yeah, their fight's awesome. Their fight is legitimately awesome, with the fact that he doesn't go down in one hit and Mash has to actually push himself to try to figure out how to beat this guy, even going as far as digging underground in order to avoid it. It is just so good. And the fact that Mash wins the fight in the end is even better. But then, after that, then they get interrupted by none other than Innocent Zero, the main bad guy of the whole show, with his team trying to come and collect Mash. As it turns out that Mash is Innocent Zero's son. I didn't see that coming. But the reason that Innocent Zero is such a threat is just because at the early part of the season, they literally said they were coming for Mash Burn Dead and stuff like that. And while some of the Divine Visionaries were against keeping Mash around and wanting to kill him off right away, some of them wanted to keep him around to lure out Innocent Zero. And the fact that that kind of just worked right here, where Innocent Zero just shows up, use time freezing magic in order to just freeze everybody, only so they'll be interrupted by Wahlberg before he can take away Mash, and just their fight ensues and stuff like that. It is just so freaking good, especially with the backstory. Like, I will say, in my personal opinion, the actual fight between Wahlberg and Innocent Zero, it was fine. That part was fine. However, the backstory behind the fight was incredibly interesting, revealing that Wahlberg and Innocent Zero both were taught by the same mentor, and that mentor taught Wahlberg about protecting the weak and stuff like that. Like, that actual story going behind it, especially with how Innocent Zero brings back his dead corpse, like their mentor's dead corpse, and tries to kill Wahlberg with it. That stuff I actually was really into. It's just most of the fight was just kind of fine. I don't think that it was as interesting as the whole context behind the fight, but it was still a pretty solid fight nonetheless. I definitely do like the backstory though. That was my favorite part of the whole just overall fight itself, which, speaking of the fights in this, there are many times where the show does an incredible job at making fights both hilarious but also super entertaining. Like when Mash goes up against Cell, who is just like, oh man, I'm not gonna lose to Mash Burn Dead, only for Mash to be like, I've already seen your attacks once, I could beat you now, and then ends up beating him by literally just kind of of knocking him out and creating like some hallucinations and stuff like that. I don't remember the exact way they described it, but basically he made him imagine that he was getting stuffed in the face with cream puffs. It was so funny. And just, there's so many hilarious moments like that, as well as just intense moments as well, where you just think, wow, they really took a turn from this being a tournament to just literally just being a big brawl. And Mash isn't the only one who really gets a spotlight. Lance also gets a chance when this one guy can turn people into babies, and he turns both Dot and Lance into babies. And while Dot feels just completely useless in the situation where he's just like, I can't use my powers, oh no! You then have Lance who's just like, I'll still use them. And while it's a more weaker version of them, he still uses them, and it's so funny. It's just so good. Just everything is so much fun and entertaining, and I love how things never get boring. They're just always fun. Would I say that some parts were better than others? Yes, but I still thought it was very fun. And the fact that there were just so many interesting moments as well, like as I mentioned, the whole backstory between Wahlberg and Innocent Zero, and the bringing back of their mentor only for Wahlberg having to kill it, and nearly managed to kill Innocent Zero, which I really thought that they were both just gonna die there, but then Innocent Zero was just like, time reversal. It just rewound it all and made that entire sacrifice pointless, because in the end, nobody actually died at that rate. And then Mash just coming in when Wahlberg's about to die and just kneeing his father in the face. It was just so good. It was so flipping good. Like, I remember when Mash did that, I literally screamed out, yes! Yes! Let's go! Like, it was so freaking good. It was just so entertaining. I loved it so much. Just this season really did a phenomenal job, and I'm not afraid to say it, I think this is better than season 1. Like, this season has been so much fun. I feel like even if I did go back and rewatch this a second time, I would still have so much fun with it. It is so freaking good. I loved it so much. Again, is it perfect? But I really, really liked it. I also liked how Mash is just trying his best, and the fact that near the end of the season, right before Innocent Zero leaves, and it's just like, I'll come back and fight you another time. He then summons a monster to go ahead and attack the school, and then Mash is just trying to grab at its chains and yank it away, all while the students are cheering him on, saying, you got this, Mash Burndead, you got this. I found myself just cheering along with them, like, yes, you got this, Mash! Come on! And when he managed to do it and just toss that thing into a mountain, oh man, it was so hype. It was so good. I loved it so much. It was so entertaining. Like, it is just amazing how invested I got into this season. I thought there were so many hilarious, intense, interesting moments that just really stood out. And with lots of interesting twists too. Like I said, Innocent Zero being Mash's dad. It turns out that he's part of a bunch of other people created to just solely help Innocent Zero reach his true potential and become the ultimate wizard and stuff like that. It's so interesting. I loved it so much, and it's just really good. But trying to go into a not so negative but still kind of negative territory here for a minute, one thing I want to talk about that many people have talked about before, but I'm going to talk about it for a very brief time. The thing I want to talk about right now is the opening theme. Now, I'm sure you've all heard the bling bang bang bling bang bang bling bang bang born at this point. I'm sure you've all heard it. But at the same time, I want to talk about it since, in my opinion, the song as a song for Mashle doesn't quite fit the vibe of Mashle. So when I heard it the first time, I was a bit on the fence about it. But then the more I heard it, while I still don't feel like it fits the vibe of Mashle, I am not afraid to say that it is a freaking just banger. It is so good. It is such a good song that I found myself listening to it on its own just more often than not because of how much of a banger it is. I just wish that it was fit for a more appropriate show, since while some people will probably think it fits Mashle quite perfectly, I found it to be a bit off for the story Mashle is. But even so, I still think it's a phenomenal opening, and it's just such a bop to listen to, and I really freaking loved it. But yeah, overall, I really did enjoy Mashle Season 2, and I'm just excited to see where things go from here, since there are so many awesome moments here, especially near the end where a bunch of people in town found out about Mash not having magic and they're demanding like, yeah, we gotta get rid of him! He doesn't belong in this town! Get him out! And only for Mash to gets put into jail cell by one of the people, then immediately just breaks out while the dude just keeps repeating the same line over and over again, just not believing what he's seeing as Mash just breaks down and stuff like that. There's so many awesome moments just like that in the whole show, and the fact that Mash has come so far in this one season is just great. I freaking love this season, and I consider it even better than season 1. It was just so good. But yeah, that's all I really have to say. So we're at the conclusion of this video. What are my final thoughts? Overall, I really freaking enjoyed this season. I thought it was great. The comedy was hilarious. The fights were epic. I was super into it. I really like how much it developed not just Mash, but other characters as well. And overall, I just really freaking enjoyed it. And that's why I give Mashle Season 2 a 9 out of 10. The only reason it's not a 10 out of 10 is because there were a few moments in there I was like, okay, this is just kind of fine, but those are so far and few between that it doesn't matter because I still freaking love this season and I would happily watch a season 3. And yeah, that's all I have to say, and thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I was looking at anime fans to the channel, and I will see you all around. Peace!